Hey guys, today I want to talk a little bit about what makes a good sweater yarn for me. What do I look for in a sweater yarn? And I'm going to share with you some of the sweaters that I've made and my favorite yarns. Hey guys, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Felicia from SweetGeorgia, and this is Taking Back Friday. This is a space where we come every Friday and we talk about something to do with the fiber arts. Today we're going to talk about knitting and knitting sweaters. So I did actually start knitting a sweater with that yarn that I showed last week. It was a BFL and silk fine yarn. It was in the color Blue Canoe, and I did start knitting a sweater with it. It's actually an Isabel Kramer design. I think it's one of her newer ones. I can't actually pronounce the name, but I'll put a note to what it is. I'm still trying to figure out how this whole thing is going to be constructed, but it looks a little bit more rectangular. It looks a little bit different than usual, but that is with the BFL and silk fine yarn. Now, I did mention last week that SweetGeorgia is doing a sweater yarn sale, and actually we extended our sweater yarn sale all the way until November 23rd. So if you're still looking to make an entire sweater with some of our yarn, then I encourage you guys to go check out the sweater yarn sale. Right now you can use the coupon code, which I'm going to put right there in the box here. You can see there's going to be a coupon code, and you can put that coupon code in when you go check out at the SweetGeorgia store, and that will get you 30% off your sweater weight yarn. So let's talk a little bit about the sweater weight yarn that we have in the studio, and what my favorite one is actually. So first things first, I want to tell you about the most popular yarn that we have. The most popular yarn, besides our Tough Love sock, which is a merino and nylon sock yarn, like a fingering weight sock yarn, we have two weights of yarn, the Superwash DK and the Superwash worsted. Those two yarns are 100% Superwash merino yarns, and one of them is 3-ply and the other one is 4-ply. It's basically each strand of yarn has been spun to the same thickness, and then the DK is made with 3 of those plies plied together to make a really nice and squishy round yarn. And the worsted is those same plies, but 4 of them twisted together to make a really, again, soft and squishy yarn. Both of these yarns, the Superwash DK and the Superwash worsted, are like classic workhorse yarns. They're great for things like knitting baby sweaters, kids sweaters, all that kind of stuff. So actually the sweater that I was wearing last week is this one. It's actually not a sweater, it's a cardigan shawl sort of thing. This one is knit out of the Superwash worsted in a colorway called Mink, and this is designed by Shannon Cook. I wear this quite often, but every time I wear it, everybody always asks me about this one. And I actually really loved knitting this pattern so much that I've wanted to actually make another one. I actually wouldn't mind making it in the same color, but I would make it in my favorite yarn, which I will tell you about in a minute. But yes, this one is the Superwash worsted, and this just works up into something that you can wear every day. Really, really easy. That same yarn, that Superwash worsted, is what I use to also make this one, which is Andrea Mowry's throwback cardigan. So she also has another version, which is the pullover version called Throw Over, and it's the same motif and all of this kind of stuff. And there's been a couple of videos where I talk about knitting this yoke. It's really fun, and there's so many different options that you can obviously do for doing the color combinations in this. But this is also knit with the Superwash worsted, and I wear it all the time. All of these sweaters that I'm showing you, I do wear, and they have worn well. There's not a ton of pilling or anything like that. It's actually been really great. And so this is one of the key things that we talk about at SweetGeorgia, is that it is so important that the yarn that we make, that we give to you guys, is yarn that lasts. Because there's nothing worse than coming to the end of finishing a sweater and having the whole thing felted, or just not stand up, or get holes or wear away, that kind of thing. And so it's always been really at the forefront of my mind that whatever yarn we're making, it should be plied, it should be strong, it should wear really well, and it should last you a long time. You spend a lot of time knitting these sweaters. You want to make sure that they last. So that is the Superwash DK and the Superwash worsted. Workhorse yarns, 100% Superwash merino, and they work for lots of different projects. The second one I wanted to share with you is this yarn here. This is a BFL and Silk DK. Now, I was talking about how I just started the sweater with a blue canoe, and that is a BFL and Silk Fine. So that's the fingering weight version. The DK is obviously like a heavier weight version. So this is the sweater weight version. This sweater happens to be called the Beekeeper Cardigan. And so this one is designed by Marie Green, who is Olive Knits, and it's a really, really fun sweater to knit. This little stitch pattern with the little bees on it is super cute. And again, I've shown a tutorial about how to actually knit these little bee stitches, but this yarn, I love it. This is not a superwash yarn. The BFL and Silk is not a superwash. And when you wash it, it blooms a little bit. It doesn't full because of the BFL component, which BFL is the blue-faced Leicester sheep, and I made a video about that as well, talking about this particular wool and why I love it so much. But BFL on its own doesn't seem to felt the same way that a lot of other wool sheep breeds might felt. And so it retains a lot of luster, a lot of shine, a lot of glossiness to it. And combined with the silk, it just works really, really, really well. And so BFL and silk combined together in this DK weight, I feel like makes such a good, cushy, woolly sweater. You know, some people will say BFL is not as next to the skin soft as things like merino. Merino's super, super soft. But I feel like the trade up that you get is you get a little bit more of a glossy look, a little bit more of a shine to it. And it's got a tiny bit of a toothy, woolly feel to it, barely. But yeah, I really do love this yarn too. I actually have been weaving with it as well. And so this is, I'm going to show you a sneak peek of a little thing that I made here. This is a double weave sampler. We're not going to really talk about weaving today, but this is a piece of cloth that I basically wove on my loom in 2 layers. And so basically you can see here, this is what it looked like on the loom. And when you open it up, it's actually double wide. So I did this on my loom at home. It's an 8-shaft loom, but you can do this with 4 shafts. So this is plain weave, double wide. And so this is something that we're going to be exploring more of in 2022. There's also options for, you know, making the fold at a different side, so the opening is at a different side. There's also an option to have both ends open, so you can see here I've stuck my finger in both sides, so you can have it as almost like 2 separate pieces of fabric that are joined at different places. So this is just a sampler. I was testing out different techniques, but this will become a thing next year that we're going to explore. But this yarn is the BFL and Silk DK, and it was just woven up at basically, this is 10 ends per inch, plain weave, and it works really beautifully. It would work really well as a nice, comfy sort of blanket. But that is besides the point. So that is the BFL and Silk DK. I feel like it's great all around for all different kinds of sweaters. And DK weight is just so versatile, and so, yeah, you can just use it for so many different things. Now, we live in Vancouver, West Coast, Pacific Northwest. It doesn't get super, super cold here. It also doesn't get super, super hot here. But what we have found is that people who live in climates that are super, super hot don't necessarily want to be making sweaters with wool or with BFL or any of these kinds of things. And so we did come up with a yarn that we offer. It's called Flax and Silk Fine and Flax and Silk DK. So the Flax and Silk DK is obviously the heavier weight, but it's basically a combination of linen and silk. And so linen wears beautifully in warm weather. It's just got a crispness to it. It feels light, it feels cool, and combined with silk, it has a little bit of extra shine to it. And so this Flax and Silk DK is available and can be knit up at a DK weight, could be knit up at a worsted weight for a little bit more drape. So there's lots of different things that you can do with that particular yarn as well if you happen to be living and wearing sweaters in a warm climate. Finally, let's talk about my favorite yarn. So my favorite yarn is this yarn here. It is called Mohair and Silk DK. You will see that it is my most favorite yarn, and I've made 3 sweaters in it so far, and have more planned. I do love this yarn. I happen to really, really love mohair as a fiber to work with. I feel like it's beautiful, it's soft, it's shiny, it's got so many amazing qualities to it, but I think that when people think about mohair, they think of fuzziness, they think of haze, they think of like a fuzzy brushed mohair sort of look, or even a boucle mohair. It's all really fuzzy and shedding and stuff like that. So I think that people think about that when they think of mohair. But the way that we put together mohair is hopefully different, hopefully something that you will enjoy as well. The mohair component to this yarn does not make it in any way fuzzy. It just makes it glossy and kind of smooth and hard wearing. And again, that mohair, the fiber of the mohair, makes it a little bit glossy and a little bit shiny. So I am a huge, huge fan of mohair. So if you might have also seen, we have mohair silk sock, which is a sock yarn that has a high mohair component. And the mohair, that fiber is strong, it's shiny, and it withstands a lot of wear and tear. And so that, adds to more of the strength of that fingering weight yarn to make it a really solid sock yarn. But here in a sweater weight yarn, it just lends a little bit of shininess, a little bit of gloss, and the way that it takes dye is just so pretty. So this is why this is absolutely my favorite yarn. I feel like it takes color in such a beautiful way. So this sweater is called the sailing sweater. I made this a couple years ago after being inspired at seeing this pattern at Knit City. But this is a lovely, lovely sweater. I love this one. This one happens to be made out of the colorway Arbutus. And so this is mohair silk DK. But yeah, it just feels like the dye sort of coats the outside of each strand of this yarn. And so it creates almost like a shadow effect to each of the strands. Each of the stitches has a bit of this shading, which I love. I absolutely love this. This sweater is the boxy, the worsted boxy by Joji Locatelli. So she's the designer of this one. And this one I knit at a very, very loose gauge. And so it becomes extremely drapey. This colorway is called Strawberry Tea. I think that if I were to knit this particular sweater again, I would probably tighten up the gauge to make it a little bit less drapey, less like it wears a little bit like a dress for me. And I feel like it could do really well as like a boxy cropped top. And so what I did was, I'm on the short side, if you didn't know. I had knit 17 inches of body for this particular sweater. And I think I could do definitely with a much shorter sweater, like a cropped silhouette, I think would look really, really nice with this boxy sort of dolman sleeve style sweater. But this is lovely, lovely, lovely to knit. And finally, this is one of my sweaters that I love this sweater. This is a perfect sweater for wearing in the fall. It's nice and cozy and warm. This is a design by Jennifer Steingass, who is Knit Love Wool. You'll find her on Ravelry there. But she designs really, really lovely colorwork yoke sweaters. And this one is mohair silk DK in the body in a colorway called Lupin. And then for the yoke, all of this colorwork stuff is actually our Cash Luxe Spark, which is a cashmere blend sock yarn that has sparkle in it. So Cash Luxe Spark, and I held it doubled in order to make up the weight to match the mohair silk DK. So you can actually use that mohair silk DK at a DK weight to make a much more firm fabric. So in this case, this sweater, this gauge is quite firm. And so it makes for just a solid, warm, it almost like it would deflect wind. So there's this. It just feels really good, cozy, and solid. Versus this one, which is much more loose, a little bit more airy, and it just creates a different texture. And then right in the middle is this Arbutus one, where I've basically used a needle size that was in between the two other sizes, and I feel like this fabric is basically perfect. I love it. I will put in the video here what I actually used in terms of needle sizes so that you know. But of course, it all ultimately depends on your gauge and how you knit and what your swatches tell you. And so this is something that we're encouraging people to do always, is just knit a little square, knit a little swatch, and see how it feels to you. Do you like it with this needle size or the next needle size? I know I just did that recently for my blue canoe sweater. I did knit a swatch at 3.75 millimeter needle and one at 3.5 millimeter needle, and I washed the swatch, and then it looks like they're pretty close, but you can feel a slight difference and you can tell which one you like better. So these are my sweaters. So these are the sweaters that I have made with sweater weight yarn. Of course, you can knit sweaters out of fingering weight yarn. You could knit sweaters out of lace weight yarn. You could hold multiple strands of yarn together to make up to these DK weight or worsted weight yarns. But in this case, because we are doing that sweater sale, that sweater yarn sale, I wanted to introduce you to some of these yarns so that way you know what the difference is and what we're talking about, what we're looking at. So if you do want to knit yourself a sweater this season, I encourage you to go and stock up. You can get 30% off with the coupon code that I'm going to put right here. And yeah, get yourself some sweater yarn. So that is basically it for today. Thank you so much for being here to talk with me about yarn and sweaters and patterns and all sorts of things like this. I'm really hoping to show you significant progress on my blue canoe sweater in probably a week or two. I'm hoping to get some good dedicated time to knit on it in the next couple of days. And I'll be super excited to share that with you as well. Thank you so much for being here today. If you like this video, please do hit the like button. And if you would like to see more content like this, please do hit subscribe. We come here every Friday and we talk about something to do with color and craft. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. All right, bye for now.